Welcome back to Forbidden Knowledge News. I'm your host, Chris Matthew. Tonight, my guest is Katie Griboski. Before I bring her on, I want to remind you to subscribe to Forbidden Knowledge News on Odyssey. We're always available on all popular podcast platforms. And for sure, check us out on Rokfin, where you get all our premium content, you get all our regular shows, and you can get all the premium content from all the awesome content creators on Rokfin. Also want to tell you about how you can keep your private data to yourself with next-generation security. NordVPN protects your internet traffic with cutting-edge security technologies, ensuring strong and reliable encryption between your device and a VPN server. You can also browse without a trace. NordVPN is based away from the EU and US jurisdictions and has no obligation to collect your personal information. That means they don't record, monitor, store, log, or share anything you do. Just click the link in the description and you can get up to 70% off a 1 or 2 year plan. Tonight I want to welcome Katie Griboski. She is Colorado MUFON State Director and serves on the Colorado Board of Directors. She is the author of Letters of Love and Light, 4 decades of UFO encounters and experiences and sightings shared with ufologist Dr. Leo Sprinkle. She is currently writing her second book, High Strangeness on a Colorado Ranch, the Colorado Skinwalker Ranch, Craft, Cattle, Copters, Cryptids, and Cover-Ups. Katie, welcome. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How about you?
I am doing excellent. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Now, you're based in Colorado as well, which is awesome. And I hear more and more about the amazing paranormal hotspots here in Colorado that I'm definitely going to have to check out while I'm here. You're also the state MUFON director, which is awesome as well. What really got you interested and started with MUFON, investigating UFOs and the paranormal in general?
Well, like many people, I think, I had a lot of unusual things happen to me when I was younger, both paranormal and UFOs. And I know the Laughlin UFO Mega Conference is coming up, so I'll be talking actually about the high strangeness on a Colorado ranch out there. My sister and I spent, a good amount of time on this ranch. We had friends of the family that owned the property out there in Elbert County. And this was in the mid to late 70s, and there was just tons of high strangeness out there, very similar to a lot of the activity out at the Skinwalker Ranch, Bradshaw Ranch, and many other ranches around the country and around the world for that matter. What's interesting about it is I never knew that it was ever reported. I just kind of thought, because we were told to be quiet about it, to never talk about it, kind of threatened to never talk about it. And so all those years, I just kind of thought it was this family secret. And then, I had a lot of paranormal stuff when I was a kid, shadow figures in the room, that kind of thing, typically in threes, by the bed or inside the doorway, by the closet, those kind of things, would never sleep alone. And then things really, either I was distracted and didn't notice because I was busy with college, career, marriage, family, raising kids, and, you just get busy with your life. But as my kids started getting older, I just started revisiting the paranormal piece of it, because throughout my life we would have, not really psychic things, but just, when my father passed away, activity would pick up, and activity in the house. We lived in a haunted house actually out in Inglewood, where my husband saw an full body apparition, and that's a whole other podcast in itself, a lot of crazy things. So I really got into like the ghost hunting and watching Ghost Hunters. That was like my favorite show, and actually went and did, how they have their events that they have. I did one at the Stanley with Jason and Grant and all that. And then I actually flew out to the St. Augustine Lighthouse and did an event with Steve and Tango. And that was just such a cool time. But that kind of led back into what happened all those years ago on the ranch. And I heard about MUFON, like I was watching some documentary or something, and I joined right away as a field investigator to start researching what all that was on the ranch. It wasn't until a few years later that I bought George Knapp's and Colm Kelleher, PhD's book, Hunt for the Skinwalker, that I turned to other hotspots and started reading about the ranch in Elbert County. And I was just like, you've got to be kidding. So from there, I've been researching that. And it's just been an incredible journey, actually,
Is there an official name for this ranch?
I call it the Elbert County Ranch.
Elbert County Ranch.
You know,
Okay.
Elbert County, there's small towns, and I do this because I have a list of over 200 people, just that I've pulled from newspaper clippings, and you know, Sheila led me to this person and that person, and so since there's such small towns, and I feel like I'm building trust with people in the town, I don't want to give the exact town, but you have small towns like Elizabeth is in Elbert County, and actually I'm learning. Colorado MUFON, I just got an email from a gentleman that had a very, very close encounter with the craft in Elizabeth, which is also in Elbert County, that he had seen. And his neighbor, actually, he didn't realize at the time, but saw it reported, and it was in the newspaper. So I'm hoping that gentleman locate that newspaper of the craft. But this was craft on the ground, saw the lights. It was a very close encounter experience as well. But there's Elizabeth, and there's Kiowa, and there's Rama, and there's all these small towns out east in Elbert County. And actually, I'm learning that all of these small towns had experiences both with UFOs, tons of cattle mutilations. And the more I look into it, and what I've learned through seasoned investigators that have been around decades longer than I have, I'm still considered a newbie here. But I've learned that, even with Project Blue Book and stuff, back in those days, if there were paranormal events connected to the UFO event, a lot of times that wasn't reported. They just wanted the nuts and bolts kind of light in the sky or craft on the ground, and they kind of left out all the paranormal stuff. So I love going back and re-interviewing these folks and saying, hey, I have some more questions for you. I know you saw this incredible light or UFO or Sasquatch, whatever it is, but did you have paranormal activity too? And 9 times out of 10, the answer is a and the blah, 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 and it goes on.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I really like connecting those two pieces together.
I do too. Yeah, I have for years.
Yeah.
I've been loving to bring researchers together that kind of touch on both sides of the areas, paranormal and ufology, and bring those together. I think that's the only way that really going to learn anything new about this phenomenon. Now, you mentioned that growing up, you spent some time on this ranch and you've had some experiences. Could you tell us about maybe a couple of the most profound experiences that you remember on the ranch?
Yeah, the scariest time, my sister and I were over there. I believe it was a Saturday night. It was either a Friday, Saturday night. It was on the weekend. The adults were in the front room. My sister, I was the youngest one. So my sister, 6 years older than I, her and I were up in the upstairs bedroom with the 3 boys. The people that owned the ranch had 3 sons, Jackie, Chris, and Scott. I won't give the last name. So all the kids were up hanging out in the bedroom and, being teenagers and whatnot. And all of a sudden, huge bright light comes in through the bedroom window, and we're like, whoa, what is that? And right at that moment, all the power in the house goes out. Everything goes out. And you know how that is when you're young and you got a bunch of kids together, like, oh, whoa, this is scary. But the scariest part of that night is when the power was out, all of a sudden, right before that, we were hearing that humming noise out on that ranch. The hum, that noise was heard often, and sometimes it would get so loud it would change decibels, and it seemed like it came from under the ground. It was very strange. But so that happened. The bright lights went out, and then all of a sudden, out of this, it seemed like it came from everywhere in the house. This loud electronic voice came out and basically threatened us. It said, I didn't know what it said for the longest time. I remembered the event happened, but then in the briefing document that I received from John Schuessler, it said in there exactly what it said. So I was like, oh my gosh, there it is. Like, to get that briefing document was confirmation on so many things that I remembered, because I was pretty young. I'm 9 to 12 years old, and my sister remembered, but they're like those vague, like, I know that happened, but to see it specifically, what it said in that briefing document was like confirmation. Oh yeah, but what it said was, we have allowed you to remain. We've interfered with your lives very little. We have allowed you to remain. We've interfered with your lives very little. Your friends will be warned not to talk about us and it was really, really scary. And after that, we took
Wow.
off the ranch. Yeah. The other scary thing, this was a daytime thing. They had a pickup truck. They had trees in the back. So they had like a little, I don't know, water source in the front. It was kind of rural in the front. I have pictures I'll share. And then the back's all trees. So there was like a road that went back throughout the trees, and we got that in the truck. The hound dog was in the truck, and we were just driving around in the trees, and we stopped at this little outbuilding. We get out of the truck. Jackie goes over to the outbuilding. I don't know what he was doing, but all of a sudden we hear that noise, and we look over in the trees, and there's this box. It's glowing like orange and yellow. It's like this big of a box. It's sitting in the trees. The dog starts going crazy. Jack's like, get in the truck, get in the truck. And all of a sudden that box just disappeared. It didn't go on the ground. It didn't fly away. It vanished. It was the weirdest thing. And what was cool about learning about this box is the sheriff also in the reports had reported seeing this box. And he was going to approach the box, but didn't. He went back into town to get the posse sheriff. And he claims that he also witnessed that box just vanish and disappear.
And how big was this box?
It was like bigger than a shoebox. So 2.5 feet, 3 feet.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is super interesting.
Yeah. So I don't know what's up with the boxes, but I wasn't the only one to witness the box. Jackie and John witnessed the box also on other occasions. Like I said, the sheriff and the posse sheriff saw the boxes. So I don't know what's up with these boxes, what they were. But what occurred to me is just recently, actually, that mechanical voice, that threatening mechanical voice, I'm wondering because, and I can't wait to share this at the conference, but in the file from that case, which Dr. Leo Sprinkle had in Laramie, because I went to Laramie and pulled all the research out of that from the original reports. And there was a sketch of the ET beings that were seen out there, and they're very unusual compared to anything like you see in movies or documentaries, or, most people report the grays. These were very strange looking. These had these tubes that came out. It had this like box thing on its chest. It had wrinkles on its forehead, wrinkles around the mouth. The eyes were bigger than ours, but not as big as the, typical alien. So they were large. But one day I was at a grocery store, and there was a Popular Mechanics magazine there. And it was kind of like an AI issue, talking about AI. And it had like the tubes, and it looked very much like this drawing. And I thought to myself, I wonder if this is some sort of AI extraterrestrial that was seen out there on the ranch. And I'm wondering if that electrical voice was some sort of, I know it sounds crazy, but I'm wondering if it was like some sort of where it could make the voice, you know what I'm saying, into English. And
Right. Yeah, I know what you mean.
Like a mechanical sort of something device. I don't know. But the craziest thing of all is back before I was state director for MUFON, we had a guest speaker. I was guest speaker coordinator, and his name was Sean Bartok, and he had written a book called Flashbacks about a property he had out in Castle Rock, Colorado, very close to Elbert County. And I'm just sitting there in the third row watching his presentation, and up comes 2 drawings of these ET beings that they saw out on their property. Same thing, same tube, same size eyes, same wrinkles. Actually, I did a composite of the 2 sketches for Laughlin, where I did a morph of the 2. They're almost identical, and they were drawn completely different times, different people. Neither one knew of the other. What are the chances of that? It just blows my mind.
Yeah, that is really cool.
It's really strange.
What was it that got you involved with the ranch in recent times?
Oh, well, in recent times, I've just been out there researching, researching what's going on. Is it still going out there, contacting people that live there?
Did someone reach out to MUFON about it, that they were having complaints or strange occurrences?
No, I actually started researching all the ranch and all the experience outside of MUFON. I've never really reported it to MUFON. It's not like a MUFON case. It's sort of my own experience. That's sort of like, the thing that got me started and got me interested in it. And it just keeps morphing and growing and growing and growing as I'm learning more and connecting with more people and hearing their testimonies. I'm super excited to share some of the recordings from those interviews I did. I actually got to fly out to Florida and do an interview with Sheriff Waugh's widow and his son, who was out on patrol with him several times. Bill Waugh has passed away, but being able to talk to his wife and his son and get all their testimony. And not only that, she pulls out this big folder of newspaper articles from back in the day. She's like, boom, puts it on the table. I'm like, oh my gosh, you have all these original clippings. And, she let me take it back to Denver with me, and I scanned it and copied it and shipped it all back to her. And, just making contact lists from pulling all the names from all those articles and recontacting people, is just, it's taken me a long time to do this.
Oh yeah, definitely understandable. Yeah. And
Yeah.
You actually you wrote a book with Dr. Leo Sprinkle, like I mentioned in your intro. How did you get involved with him?
Well, in Hunt for the Skinwalker, in that book, that's the first time I learned that all those incidents were reported to APRO back in the day. And in there it said Dr. Leo Sprinkle, PhD, was one of the original investigators of the ranch. So, I talked to my state director at the time, Doug Wilson. I'm like, Doug, I need to get in touch with Leo, and, got in touch with Leo right away. I still have the letter. I have it in the book, actually, of my first letter back from Dr. Leo Sprinkle confirming that, yep, this is the ranch. And oh my gosh, you have connection to the ranch, blah, blah, blah. I still have all the file on it. So I drove out there and started digging through his archives. Dr. Leo Sprinkle's has, I think it's up to 84 boxes now of all his research at the University of Wyoming's Heritage Center that anybody can access. And I just started going and pulling files out of the boxes and getting lost in the research. And then one evening, because there's just letters, there's boxes and boxes and boxes of letters from people all around the world that wrote to Dr. Sprinkle. And the book title, the book kind of came to me out of a sleep, that just like, oh, I need to share these with other people, so Letters of Love and Light came to be. And I spent 3 years going back and forth to the archives and taking pictures of the letters. Then I'd come home, digitize them all, read them all, kind of pull out all the juicy parts of the letters, contact the people who wrote the letters if they were still alive, because these letters go back to the early 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and then I organized them into chapters. So you have, ET descriptions, craft descriptions, something that people talked about a lot was this a dream or was this a memory? So dreams or memories is in there, abduction experiences. There's things that talk about, marks that people have, and implants, and hypnosis, and on and on and on. So it was a 3-year project of just sharing commonalities that people have. And I honestly think that's what we all should be doing. And I think that's the most important part of what we all do, is to communicate with each other so we can try and figure what the heck is going on. Like, okay, this matches and this matches, and anybody else have this encounter with a box? Because if you do, please contact me, because it's very unusual. That kind of thing. So
right, yeah, I agree. We definitely need to find out more from the contactees and experiencers themselves. I think they have some of the most important information. Now, through all these letters that you went through, were most of these experiences, would you say that most of them were positive or negative, or kind of a good mix of both?
They're a good mix of both, but in the book and in the letters, I would say the majority of them seem to be positive. It's interesting because Dr. Leo, decades ago, kind of went through, because he had hypnotized and worked with so many experiencers. I mean, Leo Sprinkle was a real pioneer in working with experiencers, and he kind of noticed kind of stages experiencers go through. And even if initial abduction experiences start out to be somewhat terrifying, because let's face it, you get taken against your will, taken on board a craft, and they're experimenting on you or creating hybrids. I mean, that's not a pleasant experience. But what he found is, through these different stages, he called them pacts, It's in the book also. By the end, it's most people who have experiences, encounters, or abductions seem to be taken on this awakening journey where they feel like they have a mission or a task or a goal, whether it's, helping the planet or helping others or getting the message out, whatever that is, it takes them on a very positive journey. So, and that's kind of what's happened with me as well. Even though the ranch experiences were quite frightening and eerie and scary at the time, what's happening now all feels quite positive and good. And that's pretty common among experiencers, where you feel kind of driven, almost like you can't escape from it. Like, oh, I'm done with this. I'm gonna get off this, line of whatever work, and then you kind of get pulled back on it again for whatever reason.
Yeah, and why do you think that there are certain people that experience either, paranormal phenomenon, abduction experiences, or, even just seeing things that other people don't, and then some people can go their whole lives and they will never experience any of this stuff. Even if they're standing next to somebody who is seeing that in front of them, fed their face, they still won't see it.
Right.
What do you think is going on with that?
Yeah, I get that asked a lot, and I'll tell you why. Some of my very closest friends that I work with, including my older sister, as far as the paranormal piece goes, like when, for example, when my father passed away, she's like, well, why did Dad come see you? And I didn't really, what, he didn't like me, kind of thing. And I'm like, okay, what is that? I know that's not the case. And I've had so many witnesses that I've talked to that, I saw it, they didn't see it. So I know exactly what you're talking about. My feeling, I have two theories. I think once you have a sighting or an experience, I think, because the other question is, why does somebody who has one UFO sighting often have several? I think it's because you're actively looking more, because you've had this encounter. So you tend to be watching the skies more often because you've had this experience. Number two, I have found, and I know, like, when I talked to my friend Angelia, who sadly passed away this year as well, Angelia Shear, we both talked about this theory a lot of times, and this isn't always the case. And I'm not saying that every experiencer has had some sort of traumatic events in their younger lives, but a lot of them do, including myself. And I don't want to get into that on the show. But what's interesting to me about that is, if it's like a fight or flight. So if you, let's say you have an alcoholic father, or some sort of abuse or trauma, your other senses are kind of heightened, right? You need to know, like, is it a good mood or a bad mood? And I think when you have heightened awareness for that reason, you have, I don't know if certain connections get made in the brain, but I think that sixth sense, or that intuitive sense that has to awaken to kind of protect yourself, opens up. And that's a theory that I have from people I've talked to. It's pretty common that you'll hear that. And I've been asked the question too, like, well, if you come from a traumatic background or have things like that, well, don't you think maybe you could be making these experiences up? You're just imagining all this thing. And my research has shown that that can't be the case, because there's other witnesses as well, especially with like the ranch in the Elbert County, unless it's mass hysteria. And that's a theory too. But from what I'm seeing, I'm just like, I just can't imagine that would be the case. And that's sort of my deal. Like, I have a very open mind on one side, but on the other side of my personality is, I also like to think of things logically, and I always like proof as well. So it kind of keeps me like fighting with my own thoughts and my own thing. But I don't know if that makes sense. Did that answer your question?
Does,
I just
yes.
think some people's brains are a little wired differently, that allows them to have, your pineal gland or your third eye is opened up more, or your psychic intuitiveness is opened up more, which allows you to experience these things where others maybe not so much.
Yes, I think that that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I would have to agree with a lot of that. Now, I
Mhm.
want to go back to the ranch, the Colorado ranch, for a few minutes. I know there's a wide range of phenomenon that occurs there, from UFO sightings to paranormal activity to even cryptid sightings. What are some of the other strange phenomenon that's occurred on the ranch?
Um, well, sorry, somebody just came home. That's our little doggy in the background.
That's okay.
Something that's come out on the ranch that is really fascinating and mysterious to me, and something I'm also going to talk to a little bit about in Laughlin. I have like a 6 hour presentation I have to weed down to 1 hour, so I wish I could talk for hours about this. But it's the strange helicopter sightings and the menacing helicopters. So not only were there helicopters sighted out there, which is interesting to me because just like Christopher O'Brien talks about, one of the first original mutilations, other than Snippy the horse out there in Alamos and all that, but was a mutilation that was right on the doorstep of NORAD, which is really interesting. So there's no question, there's photographs, there's articles. We have no doubt that there were these mysterious helicopters flying around in Elbert County. But what's really interesting about it is they were also menacing people. I mean, there's articles of these small girls that were out there in Elbert County being chased by these things, other vehicles. And so as I'm reading this and learning about this from John Schuessler and others, there was a book written called The Choppers and the Choppers. And it really breaks down all that helicopter phenomenon. And to read that little, it's like a 60-page book, but there were some phenomenal, just weird things going on with these choppers. Some of them were silent. So I've been researching, did we have silent choppers back in the late 70s? And the answer to that is no. Like if you go down a hill and depending on the wind direction on that, you can make them a little quieter, but you can't make them completely silent. There's reports of people seeing what they believed were choppers, but then were like almost blind for 3 days because these lights were so bright. There's all sorts of strange things with that. So that's another phenomena that happened out there. And then there's the Sasquatch beings that were seen out there. It's not like Elbert County's in the Rocky Mountains where you think you would see these Sasquatch or Bigfoot creatures. So that's also was something happening out there at the time. It's not happening anymore. So, I mean, if they were Sasquatch just living like in the Rocky Mountains, I would think it would be a continuous thing that would continue to this day, but they seem to be connected to the UFOs that were sighted out there. So that's interesting too. There was actually, in Castle Rock with Sean Bartok, they actually saw things like thunderbirds. And there was a report of like a big phoenix type bird seen out there. So I'm not sure what's up with these birds out there, plus the paranormal stuff, blinds going up, things disappearing, banging on the door, the humming noises, this big, huge circular thing that also was in the report. My sister and I, that's something we witnessed personally. We were out there flipping the Frisbee and it was, snow on the ground. We looked down and under our feet is just dry dirt. And it was in this big, perfect circle. And that was strange, so
That is
just
strange.
a lot of things. Yeah.
And some of these paranormal hotspots, there's reports of like portals opening up and things coming out of them. Have you ever cited anything like that?
Well, other than the disappearing box, I mean, that police report from Bill Wall says that not only did the box disappear, but the tree that was next to it, he felt the two of them disappeared into the ground.
Oh, wow.
So that's like really nuts. Oh, and something else I just discovered as I'm putting this together, because I'm rereading the report. It's several pages. And you know how certain things stick out at you at one point in your life and you overlooked other things. And I'm reading through and I'm reading about these plane crashes. And one I actually, maybe a year and a half ago, I had put in a FOIA request for any plane crashes that happened out in Elbert County. And I got the one back and I couldn't really tie it to paranormal or UFO activity. But as I'm reading through the briefing document, it talks about these two planes from the Colorado National Guard that went down in pursuit of a UFO. And I thought, okay, wait a minute. If there were two National Guard jets that went down and crashed in Elbert County in pursuit of a UFO, there's got to be something in the paper about it. So I started, and this was just last week. So I'm looking through the papers. I find 2 articles, sure, that verified. There were 2, I think they're called 7ADs. There was the name of the type of jet. They crashed at night. And the interesting thing about it, of course, the article doesn't say that they were out there chasing UFOs. They did say it was in between Elizabeth and Kiowa. The 2 of them went down. Both pilots were ejected, and they both survived. So nobody was killed in these crashes. They say that both of the jets, though, were armed. And I'm thinking, why would you be flying around at night? This happened at night in Elbert County with armed jets. Like, that doesn't make sense to me. Where people live, like in the articles, they say they're just training exercises. And I'm like, that makes no sense to me. So that was kind of a cool thing to actually find verification of. So there you go. Couple jets out there chasing some UFOs.
Wow,
Crash.
that is really cool.
Yeah.
Now, I understand that there's also hundreds and hundreds of cattle mutilations reported around that area, right?
Yeah, right. Linda Moulton Howe at the time, as a matter of fact, George Yarnell and Bill Waugh were both in her documentary series, that movie that she did, Strange Harvest. So you can see Bill Waugh in there talking about the things that happened out in Elbert County at the time. And it's cool to go through all the articles because you can see the toll rising. So, like 4 mutilations, 15, 40, 55. And it turned out there were over a few hundred just in Elbert County alone from these years. So yeah, a lot. And not only cattle and cows, but there was also a horse right outside the window. One of the recordings I'm going to share is from a witness that right after high school, her and her husband bought property. It's right on the Elbert County line. It's even more rural than Elizabeth and Kiowa, but it's out in Rama. And I don't know if I should give it all away, but it's a really cool interview where she talks about her husband's out checking for calves on horseback, comes across one of the calves that is dead. It has an incision in a perfect square with the hair removed, but the skin was still there. Wow. And it was really strange. So he gets on the horse, goes back, gets Sheila. They come back in the pickup truck. They said it took no more than 30 minutes for that to happen. By the time they got back, that calf was completely mutilated. They're miles off any main roads. They didn't hear any helicopters. There's no track marks. There's no nothing. And she actually sent me the photographs from that time. So I will be sharing that in Laughlin. Not only did she give me the photographs of that calf, this perfect cauterized incision with organs removed, but she had other photographs of other calves that were killed from coyotes. So you can see the difference between a coyote killing a calf and what happened there. And they said it terrified them. It was really eerie. They felt they were being watched. They said it was evil. It felt evil. It was really scary. And another thing about the cattle mutilations at the time, you had to remember, people had loaded shotguns by the door. These ranchers were actively looking. That's the other thing that gets me. These people were looking for the perpetrators because they thought they were satanic cults or, cults at the time. So they had loaded shotguns by their door. There's a $10,000 reward that the cattlemen are offering for anybody who can capture these people taking these cattle. Nobody ever solved it. And, like Chris O'Brien, I believe the majority of them, they believe that was governmental dark projects, maybe doing experiments on tissue and whatever. But there's a certain amount, just like the story I just shared with you from Sheila, that has a high strangeness to it that doesn't seem like it's these black op helicopters doing. There's something else that's a step above, that's connected to whatever this UFO banging, humming, all that. I think those high strangeness mutilations are connected to that phenomenon. So I think our answers don't always have to be cut and dry one thing. I think it'd be a combination of things. Maybe 2 things were going on at the same time. I don't know. And that's one question I always ask my witnesses, like, do you think these helicopters were out there perpetrating it or causing the activity, or were they out there investigating and trying to figure out what the activity was?
Yeah, that's always a big question for me, is how much our military or these black projects really involved with this stuff. How much do they know, and how much of what we see in the sky is their craft, and they're
Mhm.
reverse engineered whatever they're doing.
Right.
Have you come across any that you could confirm, oh yeah, that this is definitely the military doing this, or anything like that?
I mean, certainly there's the reports from people and photographs that you really have to suspect that. I mean, even Bill Wall and his wife, they were out one night, they saw this yellow orange, again, something up with these yellow orange lights, I don't know, and a helicopter comes off the bluff. So they saw that. So they were out there. There's no doubt in my mind they were out there. And I asked them that very question. And they felt, as I feel now, after all the research that I've done, is that they were just like chasing this UFO and those two crash. I think they were out there trying to chase down what was going on, trying to figure out what was happening. I don't think that they were the cause of all of that activity out there, you know.
Right. Yeah, that would definitely make sense.
Mhm.
Now, being that we're in Colorado, I know that there is tons of paranormal and strange activity that happens across the state, including Bigfoot, which you mentioned earlier. And you said it was like possibly a different type of Bigfoot sighting than your typical like Rocky Mountain Bigfoot sighting at this Colorado ranch.
Yeah, and I don't know if it was because I was a little kid at the time, but when the adults, when I'd hear them talk about it, they would refer to them as white fuzzies.
Ah.
And so I'm like, why white fuzzies? And it was reported that they were like a whitish gray haired kind of thing. Maximistas, they kind of look different than your typical Bigfoot creature. So yes, they looked a little bit different than what. So if you want to go, I don't know if you've been up to Bailey, Colorado yet,
Not yet.
but Bailey has a great Bigfoot museum up
I've
there.
heard, yeah.
Yeah, that's a great place to go. And to be honest with you, not that I'm a big skeptic, but when it came to like Bigfoot, I was like, I don't know. I know my sister kind of connects them, and she had the experience with the Sasquatch out there. I personally never saw one.
Right.
So, but I had a cabin up in Bailey. We have property now. We're actually building a house up in Bailey. And just my real quick Bigfoot story. I was sitting up there by myself, waiting for my husband and my daughter to come home. The sun was just coming down. I'm out there enjoying the back. We had just put in a big, huge water feature on the back. So I had the sound of water running, right? I hear two like choom, choom, like tree thumps in the front. It kind of freaked me out a little bit, kind of made me on alert. All of a sudden I started smelling the worst smell I've ever smelled in my life. And I'm like, what in the world? So I went in, waited for my husband and my daughter to get home. By the time they get there, it's dark. We go out, we could actually follow that smell on our property. We had a couple acres, but I went out the next day, I'm looking for, track marks or hair or whatever, but I actually went to that museum and put a little pin in the thing because I'm like, that was strange. Just the smell, the sounds, it was just outside the norm. And my thought was like, I wonder if he was like curious on what this water feature was. I don't know. That's my only Bigfoot experience that I've personally had up there.
Now, a lot of
Weird.
researchers tend to think that it is connected to aliens or UFO activity, Bigfoot, and it is kind of compelling whenever you see all of the evidence for having these sightings, and at the same time having a UFO sighting or something paranormal happen, and or the area you're in is a paranormal hotspot as well. So it makes you think that it could possibly be connected in some way.
Again, I think it's that conundrum of, I think some of them are and some of them aren't, so again, I think it's both answers. I don't think they're all connected to UFOs. There was a really good book written about that. Is it Stan Gordon? Does that sound right? Yeah, he wrote a really
So
good book about that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very interesting, and I definitely I'd like to do some more exploring of the phenomenon, especially now that I'm here in Colorado, close to the Rockies in the wilderness. It'd be very interesting. Now, I've also seen videos and heard some different researchers speak of another cryptid that's kind of new to me. It's just recently that I've heard about this and seen some videos about it. Have you heard of the Rake before?
I haven't, no.
Okay, it's kind of like this long armed, hairless creature that has been spotted in the woods. Long arms, long legs, kind of bald. Looks like a gray ET, kind of. I'm just wondering if you've had any reports of this because I've seen some videos and had a couple of people on to talk about these kind of strange creatures that are like a mix of a cryptid and an alien before.
No, not we haven't through MUFON, but we have had a couple interesting. I mean, I know MUFON likes to kind of stick with UFOs and things, but we did get like a Mothman type of sighting off of E470 on the way out to DIA, which was very unusual, very credible witnesses, two witnesses, a father and a son, I believe, spotted this big like Mothman bird. So that was unusual. And there has been some really interesting reports up in the Rocky Mountains towards like Vail and Breckenridge of these really strange, loud noise like sounds that are not aircraft, unexplainable sounds, which I think is a really unusual phenomenon as well that you hear reported from around the world. But I haven't heard of that creature, no.
Now, as far as the state of Colorado, do you get a lot of actual abduction reports through MUFON? People who claim that they've actually been taken on a craft and either been experimented or, something happened to where they were taken. Does that happen quite often to where you get those reports?
Yeah, it's been on the rise. We're getting more and more of those reports. And interestingly enough, I've just been working with a couple that live up in Conifer, Colorado. They weren't really interested in ufology or UFOs or paranormal. This is your typical, guy and his wife going to work, living their lives, and all of a sudden these unusual things started happening to them. Both, again, I don't know if this, he's saying, I don't know if this was a dream or if it really happened. It felt like it really happened. And then spotting craft and unusual things. So it's nice to have the ERT team with MUFON that you can kind of refer those to. And it's a good source for, networking in that for that. But they do seem to be on the rise. So yeah, we do.
And do you have a good percentage that actually report phenomenon like they're being experimented on, possibly fertility experiments where they're even meeting hybrid children? Have you ever had any reports like that?
A fair amount. And I've actually had, after my presentation I gave here in Colorado about the ranch, because, that's the personal side of this that I don't talk a lot about. And I've had, well, do you think you were abducted? Because not only did the phenomenon happen at the ranch, but I had some unusual things kind of follow me home to my home, in Englewood. So, and Dr. Leo put me under for an hour and a half and what came through there and so on and so forth. And when I'm sharing the more personal side of the story, which I won't be doing in Laughlin, but people can talk to me or ask me about it, I don't mind talking about it. They have come up with me and shared those type of things because oftentimes, especially when you're talking about the hybrid children and hybrids, it's very emotional. I have people that break down and cry and, oh my gosh, you really struck a chord with me there. And this happened to me. And that's a tough one because there's so much stigma to that. And even I don't like to talk about it for that reason, like, oh my gosh, but it is an actual phenomenon. So many people have reported it. And not only that, but there's so many similarities to and commonalities to the people who do. So it's really interesting. In researching the Letters of Love and Light book, it was really cool. I came across a letter of somebody who had an abductions experience in Snowflake, Arizona, decades before Travis Walton. And same blue light, very similar kind of circumstances. And that's in the book as well, that letter. It's really interesting. Talks about an abduction in Snowflake.
Yeah, that is
and
really
again,
cool.
something else that I kind of discovered. And I know it's nothing new. Like I said, I'm kind of a newbie on the scene, and there's people been doing this decades, and I'm not coming up with any great new surprising information here, but it was really cool. So if you go to the United States magnetic field map, you can go online and look at the, magnetic, differences in the United States and around the world. And I was just curious on what all these ranches look like. So where it pings out, where things are the highest magnetic state, like, so your highest, you would have two magnets just pulling together, is the lightest shade of pink on the map. And there at the bottom where the magnets would repel is really dark blue. And every single ranch, so Sean Bartok's ranch, the Elbert County ranch, the Skinwalker ranch, the Bradshaw ranch, and the Ohio Pile ranch, which I haven't even touched on here yet, is in Pennsylvania. All of these ranches top the chart. So they're highly, highly magnetic. So I believe, like many other people, there's something to that high magnetic, those high magnetic areas, not only for UFO, but also for paranormal activity, So
Yeah,
there's
that's
something
super interesting. I've heard that before, and I think that's definitely worth looking into. And I think that there's factions of our government that already is looking into it, especially in Skinwalker Ranch. I've had some of the guys on my show from there, and I definitely think they're looking at magnetic anomalies and things of that nature.
Has to be connected.
It does, definitely.
Yeah.
Now, through your career, have you had any strange, Men in Black encounters, or any reports of strange encounters like that, or unknown government agencies or agents
You would have to ask
talking
me
to
that,
people?
wouldn't you?
Yes, I would.
Well, I haven't had your typical Men in Black at my door, kind of thing.
Right.
However, I've had some interesting people that are kind of in my life that I feel have very mysterious backgrounds. Let's put it that way. And I think they're very well aware of what I'm doing and what I'm saying and what I'm researching. Sometimes they're patting me on the back and like, here you go, Katie, this little tidbit of information was for you. Push, push, push. And other times I feel like they're going, let's not go there, let's go over here. So I feel, and I don't want to get in trouble here, but I do think that a lot of the people that are really into this topic really heavily, I can't imagine that they're not being watched or monitored or guided or whatever in some capacity. I just do.
Yeah,
There's
along
so
the
much
same
information
lines.
coming out right now, and I'm wondering what the motivation is behind that. You turn on any news channel right now, and in this latest news, I don't know if you saw that 60 Minutes report.
Yeah, definitely.
But they've been seeing things in the sky every day for 2 years.
Yeah.
What is that? Something's going on.
Yeah, definitely so. And along those same lines, I've had a couple of speakers that are going to be speaking at the conference who have told me that, aliens walk among us, and I've spoken with them, and they're probably going to be there at the conference. How do you feel about that? Do you think that there are actual ETs just kind of walking among us that could possibly be going to these conferences and checking things out?
As far out as that seems, because it does seem a little like, really?
Yeah.
I try to keep an open mind to it. Who knows? Who knows? Who am I to say? Who am I to say that you're not? Maybe we all are, right? There's that theory, like we all come from some Mars, or who knows what. I don't know. I'm not going to judge. I have no idea.
Right. Yeah, definitely. Now, I know you've done some paranormal investigations as well. You mentioned earlier, how some people could have attachments after they've been around paranormal activity. Have you ever experienced anything like that, like going on an investigation and then come home and there's like something strange that's kind of followed you along?
Well, I've seen, that's just lately for whatever. Well, I just acquired a big collection of boxes from somebody who just passed away, who is a lifelong member of MUFON, a wonderful woman, but I have all her stuff. And since these things have entered my house, there's things falling in the basement, there's knocks behind me, my husband sees a shadow figure right behind the couch. The weirdest thing that just happened last week, 3:30 in the morning, I hear something blaring. I thought it was my son had the TV on. I was just getting ready to get out of bed and say, why is it, what, turn that down. My husband and I get up, we walk out into our living room right here. Our big screen TV is completely black, but the sound is blaring on it. We look at the clock, it's exactly 3:30 in the morning. And the crazy thing about that is it's not an alarm. I can't even get it to do that. I can't get it to have a black screen and just sound. So that was freaky. So I've been talking to this lady. I'm like, I thank you for your things. I will take care of them. I'm cherishing them. So that's picked up. I've seen a big blue basketball size blue orb in my room years ago. A Lego box. My kids were smaller at the time. A bucket of Legos fell over in the corner. The outside back lights, the auto lights were going on and off. I had journaled it and written about it. So strange things like that. But as far as attachments, I'm a person who believes that, just same with Ouija boards and things like that, I feel like if you go in with the right state of mind, the right intentions, the right protection around you with positive thoughts, positive light, positive energy, that you can protect yourself. And I think it's important that before you go out to a paranormal hotspot or anything that you do, if you want to connect to anything that's outside of our reality, that you have to protect yourself in positive ways, because yes, negative things can attach to you. Negative things can follow you home if you allow it in. So I'm a believer that you really do have to stay in that positive frame of mind, and otherwise you will allow that stuff in, and that's never good.
Right. Yeah, I would imagine not. Now,
Yeah.
you said earlier that you actually lived in a haunted house for a little while.
We did. Yeah.
Could you maybe give us maybe a couple of the most
And I
profound
know who haunted
experiences?
it. Yeah, I know who haunted it. So the
Really?
story is, yeah, my dad, if you knew my dad, he's been gone for a long time, but he didn't believe in anything. He was one of those guys, when you die, you're dirt. He just didn't believe in anything. So anyway, and he was married 4 different times. So his third wife, Midge, was kind of like his best marriage. Okay. They watched the Bronco games. They had beer. They were just really super close, and they bought this house out in Inglewood. Well, Midge never had a house of her own before, and she had really bad asthma. And she planted a garden. She ended up dying in the house of an asthma attack. My dad was with her when she passed. Okay. So after Midge passed away, all of a sudden, my dad being he loved the women. What can I say? He loved the ladies. He actually, within like 3 weeks, met Liz, this other woman, brought Liz into the house. Well, when he did that, I think Midge was really, really upset. My dad used to frost his beer mugs. He had the kind of freezer that would open like this. He'd put the frosted beer mugs on thing. Whenever he'd open that, those would fly off and shatter in the kitchen. Lights would break in the basement. He would hear footsteps all the time. So there were 2 bedrooms in there where my Midge and my dad slept, and Midge kept her favorite dresses and her favorite coats, and that closet kept flying open. And my dad got so scared and freaked out that him and Liz moved out. They actually got married. That was his 4th wife, but he left. So that house was sitting empty. Okay. So this was when my oldest son was really small. So me and my husband, were we married then? Yeah, we were married then. Me and my husband and my son, Dustin, decided to move in that house while it was sitting empty. I'm like, oh, Dad, it can't be that haunted. And to be honest with you, not a lot of things happened for the first couple months while we were there. But then we had to move out because Dad was selling the house. As soon as we started moving out, we heard the footsteps from the linoleum to the carpet. We had a fish tank and the fish tank light. So in the doorway, my husband sat there and watched the apparition. She was like doing this, something like, it was almost like she was doing something to her hair in the doorway. And my husband, Steve, he's not like into all this, but he sat and watched him to the point where he finally was trying to telepathically communicate with her. And finally, he's just like, I don't know what to do. And he rolled over and went to sleep. But the freakiest thing that happened to me was my son Dustin was in the 1 bedroom where the closet door kept opening. So he's out in the garage packing up the garage. I'm in the bedroom packing up Dustin's things, but I was really afraid to open that closet because it was late at night. I was there alone, just me and Dustin. So I go out to watch TV for a while to get the guts up to go open the door to pack his closet. I walk in the door to open the closet door, and the door just flung open, just like, here, I'll open it for you. And and I ran out. It was scary. But yeah, I never went back after that, because at the time I wasn't into all, it was like scared the crap out of me.
I can
But,
imagine.
yeah, but
Wow.
I kind of want to go back to that house and knock on their door. Knock, knock, knock.
Yeah,
Is
right.
your house haunted? Because if it is, I know who's haunting it. I wonder if she's still there, or if she passed when my dad passed. I mean, if she left when my
Yeah.
dad left. I
That's
wonder about that. But I'm too chicken to go knock on their door. I don't
yeah,
want to
that's
scare
really
anybody.
interesting, man.
Yeah.
Now we have a few minutes left. I want to get your thoughts. You mentioned it earlier. There's a lot of mainstream talk about UFOs. Really, we had the 60-minute special the other day saying, yeah, we see these things all the time. They're supposed to have this big information dump next month, which I don't know, was probably be pushed back and a lot of the information redacted, but we'll see what happens. And amongst all the other, mainstream UFO talk from the Pentagon and mainstream media and everything like that, do you think it's for any reason in particular? Although I don't really trust any information come out, it's interesting to me. What do you think?
I hope not. What I hope it's not, I hope it's not this false flag of more
Right.
fear, like fear control, like alien invasion,
Yeah.
everybody be afraid again. I mean, I think we're just coming out of COVID fear, so I don't want to start living in
The
that
alien
fear.
fear,
I hope
right?
it's,
Yeah.
I hope it's not. I hope it's not that. So
Yeah,
that's
me
a
too.
concern I have. People, if that's what it is, if they start telling you that, don't believe it, because I don't believe it. Because if they wanted to do something, they would have already done it by now. I don't know.
Right.
Um, I don't know. Kind of what my gut, what my intuition is telling me is that they're trying to get ahead of something. Like they know something's coming that they can't really control. I don't know, if it's gonna be somebody landing on the White House lawn, like the old saying goes, "Oh, we're here." But I feel like they're just trying to get ahead of something that they know is coming. That's what I think's happening. My personal opinion.
Yeah, I
I
think
don't think
that
we're
that
going to
could be
learn a
true.
lot of new information, though.
Yeah, I know. I think that people shouldn't get their hopes up for some of the stuff coming out in June because it may just be more of the same and a lot of redacted information. But
Right.
I like to pay attention to it because it is super interesting. Now, I know
Right.
you're working on some new stuff. Before you go, if you could give us a little sneak peek into what you're working on, that'd be cool.
How much time do we have?
Whoa, as much time as you need.
No, no, I've been working on another big, huge case for a couple of years. Um, and quite frankly, I need to start refocusing my energies back on there, because I kind of got shut down when COVID. It's like so many people, archives closed down, da, 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 da. So I was really going hot and heavy on it. And then COVID hit and archives closed down, and I sort of stopped. But a very nice couple out of California contacted me about a mutual friend, is like a father figure to them, that worked with their father, that worked in a mortuary in Denver. And in the mortuary where they stored the chairs sat this bolt for years and years and years. And the mortician was very curious about what was in the bolt. So he pulled his caper, what he calls his caper, and went in the middle of the night and opened the vault. In the vault was, first of all, it shocked him to note that it was a child-sized casket. There was a body in there that was covered in layers and layers of formaldehyde cloth. He peeled back the soaked formaldehyde cloth, and all the visceral was gone. The sex organs were completely cut out. He said the head was like hydrocephalic, very dimples for ears, really heavy brow, large eyes. At the time, he didn't think UFO. At the time, he felt, or alien. At the time, he felt like, oh my gosh, I just violated this child. Like he was
Right.
really mortified. And he wrote this little pamphlet about his caper and everything in detail, gave it to the Roswell Museum. Anyway, long story short, him and his wife were hang gliders, and they were visiting Roswell, New Mexico, and went into the Roswell Museum. And that's when it kind of, oh my gosh, was that one of the Roswell bodies. So I get a hold of this case, and what's fascinating about it is there was a general that talked about one of the ET bodies being taken to a mortuary outfit in Denver. Okay, so I started following this lead, and this lead led me to President Eisenhower and his Denver connection with Mamie. Now, what's interesting about the vault in the mortuary, it was held for decades by a judge. Okay, so I've been researching the judge and his background. The judge, turns out, he's a 33-degree Mason and Scottish Rite by the mortuary in Denver, which also tied to Eisenhower and his group of people with Mamie Eisenhower. Okay, so I'm learning about the judge, and what's really interesting, talk about fate intervening. My mom was living in a retirement home at the time. It wasn't assisted living, but it was independent senior living. And she had asked me to come in and do a UFOs presentation, UFO 101. So I decided to, gave this great presentation to these great folks. And I'm sitting there and I'm talking to them about this alien body, possibly Roswell body taken to the mortuary outfit in Denver, and that it was held by a judge. And one of the ladies goes, "You mean Sherm? Oh, Sherm, yeah, his widow lives on the 5th floor." Huh. So I've interviewed the judge's wife twice. Now, interestingly enough, the judge and the Eisenhowers were not close, but would go to banquets. They knew each other, So there's a Mason connection that I'm finding out with this. And I believe I know where they moved the body to. So I have that. Wow. I'm not ready to let that out into the public yet, because right now I'm trying to get documents, because since this is connected to Roswell, and as you and I both know, Roswell is like this huge deal, right? Yeah. I'm not going to go out there and spin this story that I can't back up. So for the last few years, I've been trying to back up with as many documents as I can that ties people together, that kind of pull out this whole, like, this is what I think happened. So I'm working on that. And I have some more archives that I need to visit, because I have some names of people that were on this flight that I'm trying to connect. So I'm connecting people and things. And actually, that's more important to me and where my passion lies, more so than the ranch, talking about the ranch and that. I'm doing that right now because of the book and Leo Sprinkle and stuff. But after Laughlin, I think my focus is going to go back on the Roswell body, the Roswell body Denver mortuary case.
Yeah,
so
that's awesome.
I have a lot of names and I have a lot of things, but I'm not ready to really put all that out yet until I'm really ready.
Well, I'll tell you what, whenever you are ready, I would love to have you on to talk about that a lot more, because that's super fascinating.
Yeah, it's turning out to be quite compelling.
Yeah, that's so interesting.
If we can find that body, game over.
I know, right? Wow, that's so cool. Yeah, I definitely want to have you back on to talk about that when you get more answers, because I'm sure the audience would love to hear about that. And I'm looking forward to meeting you in Laughlin, hearing your amazing presentation. If people want to find out more about you, it's KatieGriboski.com, right?
Right. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Any social media or anything?
Facebook. You can find me in Katie Griboski on Facebook as well. Yeah.
All right. Awesome. Well, Katie, thank you so much for talking to us today. That was great information, and I look forward to meeting you in Laughlin.
Thank you, Chris. And maybe this summer we can I have a few paranormal hotspots. Maybe we can go out and investigate. So that would be fun.
Yeah, that'll definitely be fun. All right. Well, I'll talk to you in Laughlin. Until next time, everyone, have an excellent evening.